Ẹ̀sìn máa gbọ́ lọ́rùn lọ́rùn. Ṣé ní kí n pé sísá Ṣẹ̀yẹ ni? Nígbà tí ó fi bóyá máa gbé ápù bọ̀ lẹ́sẹ̀. Ní ilé gbé bọ̀ náà ni mo ṣe ń béèrè lẹ́ǹkan. Màá pè wọ́n. Tó bá dìrọ̀lẹ́ ọ̀la, màá pè wọ́n ni. Pé tó bá dìrọ̀lẹ́ ọ̀la, màá wá gbé. Tó ti yé yín. Nílò lè fẹ́ ta ápù bọ̀. Iye tí wọ́n bá gbé fún mi ló máa dìtámì. Màá pè wọ́n. Ẹ má jẹ́ ó kọjá sí ọ̀run. Tó bá dìrọ̀lẹ́ ọ̀la, màá pè wọ́n. Tó bá dìrọ̀lẹ́ ọ̀la, màá wá gbé. Tó ti yé yín. Nílò lè fẹ́ ta ápù. Tó bá gbé fún mi ló máa dìtámì. Màá pè wọ́n. Tó bá dìrọ̀lẹ́ ọ̀la. If you send it, let's put it. Just send it to me. I'm moving on. I'm on Tuesday. Bless you, Lord. I've been on Tuesday. And social was that. You know, dude. Now did not. I've been
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Oh,
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. So for the lady that's maybe is on another call, do we have somebody speak with her? Good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Jesus.
The person was not telling me. Ma pe melody fún. Mo bá tẹ̀lé rí ẹsẹ̀ mọ́. Ṣé mi? Dandruff ni. I don't know why, and I've never had dandruff. Yes. This is very good. Maybe because I've stopped the record.
Hosanna, please, can you mute yourself? Okay, so my name is Mrs. Adewumi. To start with, we need to start with some rules so that it will enable us have a session that will be free from any interruption. So the rule is, please, I'd like you to use the chat box, and I don't want you to, please, can we please stop writing I don't want your matric number in the chat box again. I have a way I can generate your attendance with Zoom. So Zoom tells me when you started the class, and it tells me when you left the class, if you had left before I finished the class. I don't need you to put your matric number. So what I need from you is your attention and also your responses. And the way I like you to respond to the chat box. Now type very fast. And, please be involved in everything. Because by the time you unmute yourself and all of that, there are times you forget and you may not mute yourself again. So do not press on the audio button. You can only use the chat box. Now, those that are still writing their matric numbers there, that means they are not in this class. So Gloria Akika Chukwu is not in this class because she's in finance and she's still writing a matric number. I said, I don't want you to write your matric number, please. I can generate your attendance via Zoom. The fact that you're writing your matric number doesn't mean that you are in fact here. You can write it and leave. So do not be bothered about that. I know how to generate each attendance. What I need from you is for you to chat with me. If you have a question, I'd like to hear from you. And if I have asked the question, I want you to respond through the chat box. By so doing, we can actually communicate better and to reduce obstruction from those that may have answered questions and forgot to unmute themselves or to mute themselves now. So like I started, I said my name is Folake Adeomi. So why I'm here is to take you on the next topic, and our next topic is on contracts. So what I would do is to go ahead to share my screen with you, which is my slides for this class. And in order to have a very good flow, we are going to be using the screen, my slides now. So if you can see my screen, I'd like you to chat me. Tell me you can see me through the chat box. Can you see the screen? So let's see what I'm sharing. Okay. So as it is, it seems I cannot even see my screen. Okay, then. I think we are good to go. Okay, so we all can see the screen. That's good. All right. So as you've started with business law, and okay. So, and you've been introduced to business law, what business law is, how it relates to you, how it relates to your course of study, and also you've been introduced to the sources of law in Nigeria, and also court systems in Nigeria. So all that are very important because they form the basis for this course. So if you must do this course, if you must perform very well in this course, it's good that you are very familiar with the background as shared earlier, or as you've been told or taught earlier. So then we are doing today's for contract. And so you will see in what I have here, in the picture that I have here, you will see that there are a lot of things surrounding contracts. In fact, there are more than what we have here surrounding. Contracts is that part of law that is very important and that we can't do without. You know, every day of our life, we one way or the other, we are involved in contracts. We contract, we involve in needs, you know, and then we can have implied contract, express one, we enter into contract by our conducts and all of that. So contract is wild, is a very wide concept. You're talking about land, you still talk about contract. Intellectual property. Yes, the two Okpara asked for this YouTube link. It's been sent to the class rep platform, and of course they would have sent it to you. All right. So please let's go ahead. And so when you're talking, when you mention, what is it that you want to mention that you won't have contract embedded in it? So I would want you to please be attentive as we are taking this topic. It's very important that if you can understand the basis of contracts, it goes a long way in helping you in life general, okay? So let's do some kind of introduction. So what is contract? So as it is here, contract may be defined as an agreement that is made between two or more parties, whereby legal rights and obligations are created, which the law would enforce. Now, I want you to look at this very, very well. Now, to start with, I would have loved that I get definitions from, but in order not to take our time, I'll go ahead and whatever I want to ask subsequently, I would have asked before I open to my next slide. A lot of you would actually give me the definition of contract as being an agreement between two or more people. You are so right. But then if you have an agreement between two or more people, but that would not be enforced or that cannot be enforced in the court of law, is a waste of time. Okay? So for example, you have an agreement with mommy in the morning, or you had an agreement with mommy that, oh, mommy, I'm going to do very well. I'm going to perform very well in school. But when I perform very well, you're going to give me 15 naira. You know, that is an agreement that cannot be enforced in court. It's just an agreement, but does not have the backing of the law. That is not to say all agreement between parents and children will not be enforced in law. But looking at the nature of that contract, of that agreement, okay, it actually has no consideration and all of that. And so it will not, or it cannot be enforced in law. And most of the times you see contract that can be enforced in law, it mostly appears in commercial transactions. And like I said, there's no day in life that except you don't leave the house. Even if you don't leave the house, with the advent of online businesses now, you do business online, even without leaving the house. You go online to purchase items. You don't have to leave your house before you can eat. You can purchase you can always do that online, make payments online and all of that. And so by so doing, you have entered into a contract and all of that. So law of contract deal with obligations and these obligations are assumed voluntarily. Okay? So the law of contracts is a part of law that brings about obligation. Okay, So we have legal rights, we have legal duties that is undertaken by person with one another. So the distinctive feature being that unlike other forms of obligation, the law of contract deals with obligations that are assumed voluntarily, okay? It is not something that you should be coerced into. It's not something that should be induced into. So for law of contract, it deals with obligation which has to be assumed voluntarily. Okay, as part of our rules also, or as part of our preamble, like I had earlier said, you can ask questions from with the chat box here. So I'm going to use the chat box.
Oh,
Can ask your question. I would really appreciate if that is done. If you want to ask questions from me, let it be dropped here in the chat box. Let's see what I can do with my screen. My screen is okay. 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 I hope you can still see my screen because I'm trying to manipulate it so that I can as well be seeing the charts as well. So when you have any question, just relate it to me with the chat at there from the charts, and I will be able to respond to you. And also, there is no question that you should see as being foolish. It is better to ask questions now than having problems with them during exams. So ask any kind of question from me, I would answer you. Make any kind of contribution, it will be very relevant. Even if it's not the right thing to say, I would be able to correct your assumptions, and your contribution at the end of the day will be valid, okay? Okay, so the next point that we are going to discuss is that the law of contract forms the oldest and the most important branch of law that relates to commercial transaction. You know, even before the advent of the English, before the advent of the white men, our forefathers, before the advent of the colonial masters, have in one way or the other been involved in contracts. Okay, and so contract is very old and is the oldest form of transaction. In one form or the other, contract has existed since the beginning of our organized society. So today, just as the safety of persons and property depends upon the rules of criminal law, so the security and the stability of business world are dependent upon the law of contract. So I'll repeat myself. As it is today, if you must talk about the rules of law that talks about when people stealing, killing, bribery, and all of that, that is properly conducted by criminal law. So the rule of criminal law deals with crimes. And so the rule of contracts, law of contract deals with the business world. I don't want to know what kind of business it is. There is no business that exists herein on earth that does not have contract embedded in it. So by mutual assent, either by express or by implied, the parties to a contract usually fix their own terms and assets bound upon their liabilities. So it is the parties that themselves create the laws. You know, by the time you enter into a contract that, oh, I want to work with you. I mean, let's start with the law of employment. You are employed by an organization. By the time you are employed, during in the place of maybe interrogation, when they are doing the initial interrogation of their of employees that they're actually looking forward to, they would have asked you some questions. You would have given them your own position. Even after employment, or employees of labors would do. Before employment, they would have sent to you their contract of employment, an agreement stating your own duties and stating their own obligation. It is now left to you to say, oh, I want to go ahead with this. And if you cannot go ahead with their terms, you can provide them your own terms. Oh, I can't leave the office at 5. I would rather leave at 6. Oh, I would like to start my work at 10. Oh, these are the terms. These are what, oh, the amount as stipulated here, which is maybe a million or 1.5 million, is not going to be good enough for me. I will be going for 2.5 million. Now, if you have explained your own giving your own terms, it is now left to them to ask to also look through your terms and approve or oppose to it. By so doing, you and your employer, you are creating that law for yourselves. And so that's why we say parties in contracts, in contract law, freely create their own law. At this point, are you getting me? Am I communicating? The 3 points that or the 4 points that I've explained, is it communicate? Are you getting it? Okay, thank you. All right. Let's go. Let's keep going. All right. The state is left only with the responsibility of setting up the machineries for the interpretation of the law and the enforcement of the promises. So whether or not rights are acquired and obligations inquired in a contract depends upon the compliance by the parties with certain essentials elements during the formation of the contract. And so this is what we are saying. The state is the one that will then enforce the law. If you have both agreed to these laws, then the state has created some things, has placed some things ahead of you, that if anything happens with this law that you both had created, these are the ways it can be enforced in the court of the law. These are the ways where one party whose law or whose right has been breached can get succumb, can be compensated. And that's by going to one, the court, and also the court makes use of the law. And like I said, you have treated sources of law. The court, why court is trying to decide on whatever that you have brought before it uses the law. And remember, you also treated the interpretation of that law. And the court uses that interpretation either by mischief rule or by literary rule. It uses those interpretations to interpret the law that you have created. Okay? And so it is for the parties to create the law. Then it is for the state to enforce the law. That's the short of what I'm trying to say. And when I mean enforcement means going to courts to get compensation. It's like you reporting a party or somebody or a client or whoever that you have been involved in the contract with, report them to the court of law. Of course, you go, a few of the time you can go through the police or you can go directly to the law if it's a civil case. And I'm sure that you know what civil law is and you know what criminal law is. Okay, so Okpala asked the question. Okpala says for businessman, but businesses, do they go to the National Industrial Court or another? Now, businesses go to the normal courts, and that's going to the high courts. Now, another thing that can help your initial understanding. Please, who is this? What is happening? Please, let's be mindful of what our God gets. Okay, you should go also to my YouTube channel, Folake Elizabeth Adewumi. Now, you will also see a class on the preliminary stage of business law, where I treated what business law is, sources of law, the interpretation of the law, and judicial system. You know, if you had understood this from the beginning, you would have gotten the OG. So for businessmen, if it has to do with businesses, you go to the ordinary courts. I mean the high courts. You go to federal high court, you can go to the magistrate court. But National Industrial Court is mainly for labor matters, employment matters, or issues that relate to employment. Okay? All right, someone said, the link is Folake Elizabeth Adewumi. So I'm going to type it in here. So that is my YouTube link. And I also hope that, and I want you to also, you should, if you must look through my work, then you should be able to subscribe to my channel as well. Okay, there's also a question. Shubayo says, the law the parties create follows some guidelines, right? Yes. So Shubayo said the law that the parties make follows some guidelines. Of course, those laws that the parties make follow some guidelines, and it is those guidelines that we are treated in law of contract. It is the guidelines that we are now treating in the law of contract. Priscilla asks if there's a difference between civil law and criminal law. I want you to go back to that link, to that YouTube channel, then you can be able to, because I don't want that to actually go into. Opayemi says, please, can you come again? National Industrial Courts only deals with disputes on labor, employment, employee, labor matter, anything relating to labor. But anything on contract, a businessman buying and selling, hire purchase, all of these things, you can go to the High Court, Magistrate Court, the Federal High Court. Okay? So I hope that has answered your question. So let's keep going. So the process of creating a valid contract is the focus of our class. And so we are going to look at principles, we are going to look at guidelines on contract. So I want us to also examine some elements, or let's say to classify contracts. Let's look at the classifications of contracts. So, if I may ask, can anyone talk to us on classification of contracts? What do you think is the classification of contracts? If I say classification of contract, what does it mean? I'm expecting to hear from you. What is the meaning? What is classifications of contract? Yes, types of contract. Oh, beautiful. No, I wouldn't say elements. It's not elements. It's just classification, division of contract. Thank you, types of contract. So what are the types of contract that you know? What are the types of contracts that you know? Good. Someone said implied contract, quasi-contract, express contract. Wow, this is a very good one. I'm sure you have read, no, sales of goods is not a contract. No, I'm saying types. Sales of goods just is a branch of business law. Yeah, bilateral. No, that's good. That's good. I'm getting a good feedback. It's a good thing. You are giving me good responses. So like, as you all has explained, those are the types of contract. So let's take them one after the other. So this is classifications of contract. So under the classifications of contract, we have formal and informal contract. We have bilateral and unilateral contract. You have express and implied contract. We have executed and executory. We have quasi-contracts, and we have void. Now, if I mean void, voidable, valid, illegal, and unenforceable contract, I am only talking about the aspect of contracts that talks about their legal effects, talks about the legal effect of contract. So what is the legal effect of a certain contract? That's when we talk, that's what I'm talking about. If I mention valid, void, and all of that. So let's now take formal and informal contracts. Okay, so as you have seen here, a contract under CIL, looking at formal contract, you either call it formal contract or contract under CIL. Okay, so a contract under CIL is one whose terms are embodied in a document, which is then signed, it is sealed, and it is delivered by the parties. Okay, so this is the most solemn form of contract making known, that is made known in Nigeria. It is solemn in the sense that it has to follow this formal way. It has to be signed, it has to be sealed, and it must be delivered. Now, although with the advent of new technology, this may vary, then we are going to discuss about how it could vary. All right, that's what we're going to be talking about. We are going to be talking about how it may vary. All right. So once these formalities have been complied with, they are valid and they can be enforced even without the necessary consideration. Okay. If a paper has been signed, it has been sealed, and it has been delivered, even without payments, consideration means payment, even without payments, that document will be seen as being enforceable in the court of law. So you remember, or I will be saying categorically to you that a promise to make a plain gift is valid once it is into an instrument, once it has been signed, sealed, and delivered. What I mean is that a promise that there are times that you could just like a person and or let me just use an elderly person now, where maybe one of our dads or one of our moms sees another person as like, oh, I like your character, I like your personality, I want to give you this plot of land. Immediately that thing, even if the other party, because we'll get to know the importance of consideration as we're going along, as we're going now, as these are lectures to be going. But then you will get to know that even if payment is not made, in as much as it has been, there's a paper, in that paper, the terms of their contract, the terms of the agreement is there, then it is signed, it is sealed, and it is delivered. It will be seen as a very, very valid contract. So I'm seeing a question from Oliver. Oliver says, if a contract is not sealed, would it be enforceable in the court of law? Okay, that sealing, we'll see how it works very well now. It's not all contracts. I'm just saying a type of contracts. It is not all the contract that is expected to be sealed. I'm just saying a formal contract must be sealed. But nowadays, with the advent of a lot of things, this issue of sealing has been reviewed. So we are going to talk about it as we are going along in this discourse. Okay, so let's keep going. So sealing meant that the imprinting in the wax of the executing party coat of arms. Now, in those days, I would have loved to have, but because of our time, we may not be able to see a sample of it. In the very early stage of all these contracts, what they normally do, especially in the Britain then, sealing means a coat of arms. It's, I think, in Nigeria too. it is like something that will be kept mostly in the possession of the crown. So it's as the seal of the coat of arms of the British, where it would then be imprinted on that document. But nowadays, what we see as sealing is like, it has become one large reddish something. Symbol is in form of a round reddish something now that people now use as a seal. They use sealing has become largely symbolic in that it consists of simply attaching to the document an adhesive red and round wafer that is easily obtained from a store. You can just go into a store nowadays and ask for that seal. Okay. So also, signature has also become is also a vital component of such a contract. So if you must have a formal contract, it must be sealed. And also delivery was only effected if the deed was actually handed over by the executory party to the other. But nowadays, delivery is no longer literally necessary that you have to hand it over. Immediately, all of these things has taken place. It has been signed, it has been sealed. Most of the times, one of the very important things nowadays is that signature. And like I said, anybody can get a seal. It's a roundish, it is round and it is red nowadays, okay? So anybody can get it. And immediately they get it, they just affix on it. So nowadays, you don't really have to go and deliver that documents. Immediately you have both signed it, it is in a paper, it has been sealed, and all other things that the contract expects of you has been put in place, then it can be said to say it is a formal contract. Okay? Did you understand formal contract so that I can go ahead immediately? We have a long way to go. Do you understand what formal contract is? Let's simply go to informal contract. As it is said, informal contracts are simple contracts. So informal contracts are contracts which are validly created by mere exchange of words. It can be oral or it can be written. It can be by conduct or as well. Conduct means where both parties make some inferences and they agree, they agree to something that can actually be enforced in the court of law. Unlike that contract that are under seal, the validity or the validity of simple contract is predicated on the presence of consideration. Remember, I said that in formal contract, you actually don't have to even pay. You may just promise, and that promise will be saying immediately the terms is written down. That promise of, oh, I want to give you this plot of land. If they write it in a paper, it is signed, sealed, and it is, like we said, it is delivered. That makes it a valid contract under formal contract. Unlike simple contract, a mere promise will not be seen as valid under simple contract. It must be backed up by consideration. And it must be backed up by the consideration. So writing under formal contract is not necessarily necessary, except where the law says it is. So where statutes demand that a contract must be in writing, it does not necessarily turn the contract into a contract under seal. So almost all contracts are simple contracts. So our general study of the law of contract is concerned entirely with simple contract. So the fact that a law says you have to write this thing down, it doesn't mean it is a formal contract, except it has followed the due process that I had mentioned. All right. So, am I communicating? So let's then look at other types of contracts. Yeah, let's talk about bilateral contracts. What are bilateral contracts? Yeah, please, I don't want to, like I said, I want you to respond to me with the chat. So, Oyegbola says, is sealing the same thing as stamp under formal contracts? You can't say it is stamp. Stamp is different from seal. A stamp is different from a seal. Like I said, in those days, seal are like something that has a coat of arms in it. It's quite different from a stamp. All right. Okay. So, Ogundele says, is formal contract enforceable? Yes. If something has been written down, then you have an evidence in the court of law to say, oh, this is what this person has said. Even if I did not pay, she promised and she has signed a document, then it is enforceable. Ogundele, okay? It is enforceable. So Doka says, is a consideration from the court or from the parties? Yeah, consideration is from the parties. Consideration is like an act or something that, or a promise that you are giving. If someone says, oh, consideration is you saying, I want to buy a phone. The person gives you a phone and you pay money. Money is that consideration. Although consideration doesn't really have to be in monetary terms. It could be an act. But consideration means you are also losing something to get something. Okay? So Oshi says, to clarify, for formal contract, even if it is written down, it does not mean it is enforceable. Informal contract, yes. Okay? But please don't go too far. I don't want you to please do this. That's too far. Informal contract are contract that does not necessarily have to be written. Okay? So Emmanuel is already going to bilateral contract. Please. Okay. Anyway, you are right, but I've not asked that question from you. Or have we? Yeah. I've even stated it, Emmanuel. Thank you. Thank you. But I'd actually stated it here. So, bilateral contracts arise where a promise or a set of promises on one side is exchanged for a promise or a set of promises on the other side. In other words, the parties reached an agreement whereby each party undertakes obligation. In summary, bilateral contracts are contracts between two or more persons. There is always a promise from both parties. There is always a promise from both parties. So, what is this? What is this? What is this? Okay, so sorry about that. Let's just... Okay. So that's for bilateral contracts. I don't know if your mind, you're thinking, so is it possible to enter into a contract whereby it's only one person that makes the promise? Although it's still between two people. So this explanation here will actually have, we said unilateral contracts, on the other hand, is one-sided contract, in the sense that one party binds himself by a conditional promise, leaving the other party to perform the condition or not as it pleases. Let's say, for example, you say, oh, I'm looking for my dog. Whoever sees this dog, I will give the person 1 million naira. That's to say how valuable that dog is. And this is advertised in national television. It is advertised in a lot of places. That is a unilateral contract. The condition the promise, you know, is coming, it's coming from just one party. One party binds himself. Now, the world can decide, every other person that that listens to the adverts may decide not to look for the dog. Or even if they see the dog, they may decide not to return the dog. They are not binded. It is only the person who has made the promise that is binded. So if anybody finds the dog and returns the dog, the person who had made the adverts is under the law to ensure that he pays. And if he doesn't pay, the person who has found the dog can enforce the law or can enforce the contract in the court of law. Is that understood? You understand bilateral and unilateral contracts and the situation where they can take place. Okay, so please, let's go ahead to what express and implied contracts are. What is express and what is implied contract? That is another example of contract. Docker says, is it the same as putting out a ransom for a criminal? It could be the same, but let's just limit ourselves because that will have to do with criminal law and all of that. So let us limit ourselves to businesses and to contracts, okay? Let's limit ourselves to contract. So Joshua said, I understand unilateral, but not fully bilateral. Bilateral is contract of saying, you went to the market, you want to buy rice. You went into that shop, you paid for the rice, and they gave you the rice. Now, in that kind of contract, by the time you enter, you say, I want to buy rice, and you have agreed that the bag of rice is 90,000 naira. And after making payment, they did not give you the rice. They are obligated. And in fact, you can approach the court to enforce your rights. Unlike unilateral contracts, where the person that had promised to pay is under the law to make payments. But the other persons who may decide not to give you the dog or whatever, they are not under the law. So bilateral contract is mostly this contract that we do daily. What we see, we do every day is what we do every day. So, Tetan, do you now understand what bilateral contract is? Okay, Oliver says is employment. Yes, employment is bilateral between the employer and employee. Okay, all right. So I hope you all has gotten to that because we have a lot to do today. And it seems we have just 1 hour left. Let's please be speedy. But in the place of being speedy, I also want you to understand what we are doing because it is the basis of every other thing. So what is express and what is implied? As it is stated here, express contract is said to be express when the intention of the parties is clearly stated in words. In other words, the material terms is usually clearly spelled out, usually in writing, although you can say it by words. But most of the time, you both sat down. You are, okay, your classmates, you met your classmates who owns a phone. And a brother from abroad has sent another phone to him. And he feels, oh, you want to sell the one with him presently. And he told you and you agreed to buy it. You both can sit down in the class, try to tear a sheet of paper and write the terms down clearly. The phone you are giving to me, you must give it to me with a charger. It must be charging. The screen must be clear and all of that. Or you can even say it in clear terms by words. That is express contract. Yes, Mayowa says more like expression. Yes, where you actually express yourself. But, or will I say, in contrast to implied contract, they are said to be terms that are not clearly stated. That is, the intention of the parties are to be inferred from their conduct and the general circumstances of the case before them. It is by conduct. Implied contract are contract that you enter into by conduct, okay? So let's say, for example, I went to Moremi Car Park and I entered the bus going to all these, is it BRT? The BRT shuttle that goes to Yaba. When I got there, I sat down, and after sitting down, the bus, I gave, anyway, it's not like that in most cases. Or even if it is not going to be Moremi, it's not going to be the BRT vehicle. Let's say the normal small cars that we take, that we bought to the gates. You don't need to have entered, you don't need to have expressly say anything. You can enter that vehicle and come down from that vehicle without uttering a word, and you will have conducted the contract. You merely going inside, sitting down, and the bus moving, you have entered into a contract. And you perfect that contract by making payment. You don't have to say anything. You enter into the contract, you don't have to utter any word. The vehicle starts moving, you don't have to say anything. Making payment, you don't have to say anything. Only if you want to if you are expected to be given a change, maybe you had paid, but if you had paid the normal sum, which is 200 naira, you make your payment and you alight from the vehicle without saying anything. That is contract by conduct. That is an implied contract. Did you understand that? Is that okay? Yeah. I don't want you to utter anything. If anybody does that again, that means the person is going out of our class. Please express yourself in the chat box. So no, Dorcas, simple contract, implied contract are not the same as simple contracts, okay? They are quite different. It's just that simple contract can also take the form of an implied contract. So somebody says that the example I made now can also be, yes, that's a bilateral contract. Yeah, Uluwatimileyin is also a bilateral contract. Oh, Adeosun says I should explain implied contract again. Implied contract is the example is like you boarding a vehicle. Like you are boarding a vehicle from Moremi Car Park. I said you don't have to utter any word even before or after you alight from the vehicle. Because before you enter, they would have been saying gate. Or they don't even have, because we all know where gate vehicle are parked. You know where DLI vehicle are parked. You just enter the one going to gate. You make your payments. The fact that you entered into that vehicle, it means you have accepted. And then you have to make payments. You know, implied contracts are better explained when you are talking about vehicles. If you can't understand it that way, it's just the most and the best way to explain it. So someone said, if implied contract causes disagreement between parties, can it be taken to court? Like taking a bus and the cost? Now, please don't, I want you, as we are in this class, I don't want you to go too far in understanding this thing. They are basics. But if you are trying to bring problem out of what is not, okay, it will eventually be problematic for you. When I get into the explanation of principles, then we can then be talking about, oh, by conduct, by these things, by that, by those. Ayomide says, if implied contract causes disagreement between parties, can it be taken to court? Remember I said, the best way to enter into a contract is by you using express terms. But most of the times, people enter into contract impliedly. And it happens mostly in cases where people are acquainted with that trade. For instance, I am in this university. I know the cost of transportation. When I don't know the cost of transportation, I am expected to ask. Well, where I know the cost of transportation, I know it is 200. If you did not ask, you are to be blamed. I remember there was a time when they changed the cost from 100 naira to 200. I boarded the bus, the vehicle, and I'd paid 100 naira. And the man said, oh, it is 200 naira. I had to pay because I was supposed to have asked. So implied contracts are used in most places when people are acquainted with the trade. So Akinri Ola said that another example of implied contract is probably entering into a supermarket with a price tag and you got a shoe, as simple as that. Ayomide, that's very good as well. Okay? So at this point, do you now understand? So can a contract be formal and be bilateral? Yes. Remember bilateral, we mean bilateral is contract between two people. Of course, a formal contract, two people enter into it. The promisor, the promisee, they both enter, or the promisor or the person, and the person who has accepted the gift. Okay. Can I go to the next slide? We have a long way to go. Did you understand me? Adedokun, that means you've not been in this class. You are writing your number. It is well. So this one is so short it's such that it may not take much of our time. Executed and executory contract. That's another way or another type of contract. So executed contracts, they are contracts that has been executed by the both parties. You know, like you going into a shop now, saying, I want to buy this phone. Within a short time, you were able to execute that contract. You made the payment and they gave you the phone. So executory contract is such that I know when we're in school there, I know of a colleague of mine. Immediately she resumes from home, she resumes at school. What she does is she goes to, I can't remember what we call this canteen then. She goes into the canteen and give the management of the canteen, give them money upfront. She could give them maybe 20,000 naira and say, with this 20,000 naira, I want to multiply it by my meal twice per day for the rest of my stay in school for this semester. That is an executory contract. And executory contracts are contracts that are partially performed or totally unperformed. It is more or less like a contract that could be performed in the future. Like after making that payment, my friend will then be going to the restaurant every day to eat. Remember that the restaurant hasn't performed, that has not totally performed their own side of it. They will be performing their side of the contract daily. And so their own side of the contract is executory because they are still in the process of executing it. And so it is partial in the sense that my colleague in class had made his own payments. And so it is now left for the owners or the management of the canteen to continue giving her food. At this point, did you get me, please? Am I communicating? Can I go ahead? Okay, so someone said an example of executory contract is insurance. Yes, insurance is an example of executory contract. Okay, someone said, can we say scholarship scheme is an executory contract? So you have to be careful in that regard, because in scholarship scheme, most of the times you don't make payments. It is more or less like promissory whatever, where they on their side and perform their own side. You can just go ahead and you can make payments. It's not, you should not put it under executory contract. It's in form of that formal contract that I mentioned. Okay? Although not totally formal, but in scholarship, they would have told you that, oh, these are the terms of scholarship, you'll be giving this. Yours is just to make, you just give them the papers, but it is not an executory. In the sense that you haven't performed your own side. It's not as if that you have made any payment or whatever. Yes, scholarship can be bilateral because it's between. Okay. Although, remember, the process of scholarship, you have to be careful how you do it, because at some points, it is at the beginning stage that you can say it is unilateral. At the point where they now confirm you as giving you the contract, when they then give you the contract, then it becomes between two of you. Then, you know, they would have given some conditions. Unlike unilateral contract that I explained to you, it is executed immediately. Okay? But for scholarship, they would have given you some guidelines that in the process of this, like maybe you got a contract, a scholarship to travel abroad, they'll be expecting you to give them result every semester, a semester where you haven't done up to the terms or the conditions stated, they may not pay the next semester fee and all of that. These questions are rolling in. I hope I can read everybody's. So Elijah says, so does that mean executed and executory contract has to do with making payments? Although we should not totally say it's by making payments, it's by partial performance. So when you say partial performance, that means somebody will have performed their part of it. Somebody will have, payment is not, somebody may have done an act, done their own part of it, of the transaction. Oyegbola said, when the owner of a canteen tells his or her employee to give food whenever the person comes to eat, I don't understand that. So, all right, so thank you, Ayole Mayowa. So we don't take too much of time. Can you just, Olusegun said I should recap on executed and executory. So, for executed, both parties have performed. Executory, it is a partial performance. Oh, so you know what I noticed again? Let me just try to, because you should not be thinking too much for yourself now. Try to assimilate, but don't have the intention of questioning what is here. Why I'm saying this is that is saying, good afternoon, man. If an executed contract is already executed, does it cease to be a contract? Yes. Immediately you approach a shop where they sell phone, and they have sold your phone for you. You paid, they gave you the phone. Isn't that concluded? Okay? Please don't infer. Just try to calm and listen. Although I still expect you to understand. So, what then quasi-contracts? So, that means one of you is not in class. Somebody is not in class. Who is this? Esther.
Oh,
You're obstructing my class. And I don't want this, okay? Please. Okay, so let's just keep going. Hopefully, we'll be able to do a lot of things today. Don't be bothered. Where's my slide? Okay. So what then is quasi-contracts? So these are not contracts in fact, but they are so in contemplation of the law. The obligation arises not by any agreement between the parties, but by the operation of law. Let's say, for example, in your house, you call the plumber to come and work on a section of the house. And he mistakenly, or let's say, for example, in as much as I want you to please be calm and listen to this, please. In the front of the house, we have lawns in the front of the house. Or let's say we have a lot of weed, and there are two houses, identical houses close to each other. And you being the owner of one of the houses are both painted the same way, but although they have two different numbers. And you called on an old man. Please, go and mow the lawn in front of my house. Go and clear the grasses in front of my house. But Baba mistakenly cleared the grass in front of your neighbor's house. Under the law, remember, it's not a contract strictly, but the law under equity requires that the neighbor pays Baba because Baba has done a job. Okay? So the obligations are imposed by law on account of special circumstances which exist between the parties based on the principle of equity. Remember equity now. Because equity says nobody should enrich themselves unjustly. Okay? The circumstances in which such obligations arise are many, but a good example, like I said, can be seen in a situation whereby the owner of a house sits silently while the repairer mistakenly does some repairs in the house. The law please underline the word may. I didn't say in all categories the law will accept or the law would enforce that. The law may impose a quasi-contractual duty on the homeowner to pay for the reasonable value of the improvements. And so when it comes to the clearing of the grass that I also said, the courts may enforce the duty on the owner of the house to make payments. So I think that is understood, right? What is this? What is this? Okay, so what is happening? There's also a negotiation happening here. Okay. This is my charts. Let me just bring up the charts. Okay, so are we good to go? Because we need to move to our next big broad topic. Hmm. So someone said they don't know what quasi contract is. I will repeat myself, but just the way it is written here, okay? So quasi-contract, it means that it's not strictly a contract, but they are contracts that are enforceable by the operation of the law. It is the law that imposes the contract. So we gave example of somebody who mistakenly repairs somebody's maybe gadgets, but he wasn't instructed to repair that gadgets. And I gave example of maybe two houses that are identical, and there is a grass. There are grasses in front. I mean, the grass is so full that it is not well maintained. One of the houses owner, the owner of one of the houses, then contracted one old man to go and clear the grass in front of his house. But the old man mistakenly did the one in the other person's courtyard. Now, and Baba was like, oh, but I made mistake that they should pay him. What I'm saying, let's assume it's not Baba, maybe it's just one big company. They can sue, but then it's something that, you remember when I was explaining, I said the law may enforce it. The law may enforce it, and the law may not. But then that is what we mean by quasi-contract. Quasi-contract are implied. They are generated or they are given to by an operation of the law. Because it is at the discretion of the courts. Okay, so I'm explaining to Glory. It's at the discretion. And remember, it comes under equity. And equity aids it looks at the person that comes with clean hands. Because what if it was not a mistake? What if that person intentionally, because he want to make money, went to repair the thing, or went to clear the lawn? Understand? Under that case, the court will also want to, that's another condition where the court may not want to grant that. Okay, so are we good to go now? Okay, okay. So I'm taking too much time explaining. I hope we'll not take too much of time, because when the time clicks now, you all will be shouting you want to go, and you are the one asking these questions. All right, let's quickly go to valid, void, voidable, illegal, and unenforceable contract. Now, like I've said earlier, I said when we are trying to explain this thing, we explain that as regards to the effects that they have on contracts. So a valid contract contains all the elements of the contract, and it is free from any legal defect or infirmity. Which would either render it unenforceable, okay? So when you are talking about a valid contract, hold on, please. My glasses. You are saying that contract has no encumbrances. It has no problem in it. It is free from any encumbrances. So that is valid contracts. So a valid contract like I said, it contains all the elements of contracts. And when we are talking about elements of contract, it contains offer, acceptance, consideration, and it is as intended, there's intention to create legal relations. So those are the elements of contract. I'll be explaining that shortly. So what then is void contract? So a void contract means there is no contract at all in law, although there may be a tangible evidence of an attempt to form a contract. So what are the factors that renders an attempted agreement void? It includes illegality, where somebody, where a friend, two friends, they went to steal. They stole some phones, and one of them agreed to go to Computer Village to go and sell the phones. And after selling the phones, he's going to share it with his other friends. He sold the phone and did not share it. Such a contract is not enforceable in law. It's a void contract. They actually entered into a contract of, oh, don't worry, let us go and buy. So let us go and steal. After stealing, we'll go and we'll share the money. They were like partners in that contract, doing business together. But then it is an illegal contract, and so it is void. And so let's go ahead and explain what voidable is. I hope valid and void contract is well explained and well understood. So what voidable means is that when there are some legal defects in a contract, which entitles the innocent party to set aside the contract, or in the alternative, overlook if it wishes. Ordinarily, voidable contracts, they are binding, okay? From the beginning, they are binding. But it gives one of the parties the right to set aside the contract. Let's say, for example, you entered into a contract, and at some point, you notice that the other person misrepresented some fact to you. The other persons had stated some untrue statement, made some untrue statement at the initial state of the contract. It was at the middle stage that you discovered. You can decide to let go of that allegation or to go ahead. If you want to let go of it, you may say, oh, let's go ahead with this contract, but I don't want you to lie or to say these things to me again. Or you can decide to say, oh, if this person at the initial part of the contract had made some untrue statements, I don't believe this person again, and I would not like to go ahead with the contract. That misstatement, that untrue statement had made that contract, that valid contract, it had made it voidable, and it had invalidated it. You can decide to say, I'm not going ahead again, and the court will see the contract as being voidable. That means it's void at the end of it. It cannot be enforced in law. Do you understand me? I'll keep asking that, because if you don't understand me, it's like I'm just talking to myself. I will take one or two questions if there is. I won't take all of the questions again. I think that's the way I'm going to see it. I want to know if I am communicating. So let us look at unenforceable contract. So contract is unenforceable if it fails to meet a formal requirements. Remember when we're talking about formal contracts, I mentioned that a formal contract, has to be in writing. It must be signed, it must be sealed, and it must be delivered. And most of it happens in landed properties. All of contract that has to do with land must be written. You want to lease, you want to buy, you want to assign, you want to gift it, it must be written. It must be signed, sealed, and it must be delivered. So in a situation where all of these things do not take place, that contract will not be enforceable. it becomes unenforceable because it doesn't follow the prescribed or the laid down way that the formal contract should have taken. So someone asks a question. Under voidable contract, oh, you are trying to explain. That's good. Thank you. I hope whoever asked that question has been well tutored by this person. Or is it a question? Under voidable contract, when a party does not go ahead with a said agreed contract, does it make it voidable? What makes it voidable is that untrue statements. So what we mean by voidable means that you can decide not to go ahead. You can decide to make it void. Void means there is no contract. And you can decide to go ahead with the contract. So voidable means you can, at the point that you get to know that this person had lied to me, you can decide to hold on to that misstatement and say you are not going ahead with it. So it is that untrue statement that make it, although that untrue statement must be made knowingly, okay? It is that at that point that you can say, oh, it's a voidable contract at that point. It is not the element that makes it voidable most of the times. It is all of these defects. Okay. So then, somebody says, is void and breach the same? They are not the same. Void most of the times means that that thing has nothing to stand upon. Breach means that something is existing, but one of them did not go ahead, did not do their own obligation. Okay. So you guys want to know all of this at the same time, just calm down. Just listen to me and let me be explaining gradually. Okay? Because it's as if you are going already to my next, what I'm going to take in the next class already, okay? And by the time I start repeating and repeating myself, it will take time. Beautiful. Dorcas if we all can see this example of Dorcas, it has explained what voidable means, okay? So let's go ahead. What are the essential elements of contracts? Then for a contract to say it is valid, for you to say a contract is valid, there must be an offer, there must be an acceptance, there must be consideration, and there must be an intention to create legal relations. Or before we go ahead, what is offer? Who can explain what offer is? What is offer? I'm waiting. What is offer? Okay, to give. Glory, good job. I'm not expecting those that will go online and start searching and dropping something for me. Okay, initial proposal made to another party, terms of an agreement, an offer could be proposal. Good job. Thank you. Thank you. That's good. Let's just keep going. So, in order not to take too much of your time, what is offer? So, an offer is an expression of willingness to contract that is made with the intention that it shall become binding on the person making it as soon as it is accepted by the person whom it is addressed. Okay? So, an offer is a willingness to contract with intention. You decide to express your willingness to do something with an intention to go ahead with it and with an intention to have that thing binding on you. Okay? Okay, I was going to. I hope for those that are on YouTube, you are getting us as well. We are communicating, right? I think we only have 118 on YouTube out of 1,000 plus students. I think we are going to report this to the management of the faculty of management that you are not attending the class. And that is the place where the attendance will be of a very great value when we are going to be writing our tests and when we are going to doing the exams. Attendance that I am able to collate. Remember, even if you are giving me your matric number, it's not your attendance. There is a way Zoom will give me your attendance. It is the attendance that I'm able to collate during this period. Those are the only people that would write the tests and the exams. Because if we have 1,000 plus 1,500 students taking this course, and I only have 300 on Zoom, and I have just 102 on YouTube. In fact, we don't have like up to half of the students here present. Okay, so let me just go ahead so as not to take our time. Okay. So an offer can also, in a normal case, an offer can, or it is usually made to a specific person or to a class of person. In such a case, the offer is capable of acceptance only by the person specified or any person within the class that is specified. So what I mean in essence is that an offer can be made to the world at large. An offer can also be made to specific set of people. It can also be made to specific set of people. So what I mean by this case, this Khalid versus Kabuli Smooth Ball, this company, they sell cigarettes. And as they are, they now promise maybe in one of their adverts that if anybody caught these diseases, it's called influenza. That is maybe having the symptoms of having shiverish, coughing, and all of that. Maybe after taking these cigarettes, a person actually caught these things. We are going to give the person 1 million naira. I'm just giving 1 million naira as an example. It's a foreign case, so it was in dollars or maybe pound. And they even made the promise going ahead and saying, we have deposited this 1 million naira in First Bank of Nigeria, in First Bank. And if anybody catches these diseases caused by called influenza by taking this our cigarette, then that person will be given this money. Somebody says Zoom can only take 300 students. Yes, you have a link for YouTube. So you go through YouTube. All right. So as I'm going, so in this case, then will I say luckily for this person, he caught the disease called influenza, and he went to he came to claim the money, but the company was then saying, oh no, that was just an advert now. You cannot take an advert seriously. So the man sued them to court. Khalid sued Kabuli Smoke Ball to court. And when they got to court, the court in its decision stated that an offer has been made to the world. and immediately you have made that offer to the world, anybody that comes off to go ahead, taking that thing and as well getting that diseases should be paid that sum of money. And so it was, the court went ahead to give its judgments. So there's this question here. I said, what classification is this case that I've just stated to you? What is the classification of this case? Under what? Yes, beautiful. People are saying unilateral. Clap for yourself. You have done so well. So let us just move very fast. How can we make offer? How can an offer be made? How may an offer be made? So an offer need not to be made in a particular form. It doesn't have a particular form. An offer can be made in writing. It can be made by spoken word. It can be by implied, just implied by conduct. You remember the vehicle, whatever thing that I've mentioned. An offer is when you get to Moremi Garage. Okay? And you had entered the vehicle. There's an offer already on ground. But I don't want to, our example, let me be careful because then you start inferring a lot of things to it. So I don't let you infer. So the general rule, however, is that no matter the form in which it is made, the offer must be clear, the offer must be complete, and it must be definite. It should not be ambiguous. It should not be vague. So it has to be clearly stated. That's why I said, if, you felt, I want to enter this vehicle and I don't know the price, it is better you ask. Do not assume. All right? So then we should be able to distinguish an offer from advertisement and display of goods. Okay? A few of these things are called invitation to treat. Invitation to treat. When you see a display of goods, when you get to a shop or into all of these, you went to ShopRite and you went into the mall, okay? The fact that they display those things on the shelf is not an offer for you. It is called an invitation to treat. The only time that you make an offer is when you pick that thing up and you gave it to the attendants. At the time when you gave it to the attendants, you are the one making the offer to the attendants. The attendant then makes the acceptance by typing it and giving you like a receipt. That is an acceptance. That is an acceptance. During the process of coming all the way from the shelf to the attendants, you can still go back to return it. That is what we mean by saying that, like what I mean here. And it shall become binding on the person making it as soon as it is accepted. Before it is accepted, it may be returned. But immediately it is accepted, it is binding on you. So you should be able to differentiate an offer from invitation to treat. Invitation to treat, it is when it is on the shelf and you took it, at the process of taking it, you have still not accepted. You make offer to the attendants who then put it in their machines or whatever, and then come up with a receipt for you. Is that understood? Next, I'll also give you an example of an offer from auction sale. Auction sale means at times all these sale that you... Oh my God. Dorcas, please don't go too far. Dorcas says there's no duty. It's just the way it is. You make an offer. And I said, when you make an offer, until that person had accepted, you can go back and say, I'm going back. I'm not doing anything again with this thing. Okay? Just please gradually take it as it is. Okay? Although you can say, just listen, okay? So that I don't go to, all right. Auction sale is when they say, oh, someone said my voice is breaking. I hope it's better now. I want a response in the chat box. Can you hear me? Because I have my internet intact. Okay, so auction sale is those sale that at times they will just call a lot of people to a gathering and then be exchanging, you know, be giving prices. They may just take one car and say they may start the price from 10 naira. They can say, oh, this car is 10 naira. Oh, who can pay? You know, some people can come up with, I will pay 1,000 naira. I'll pay 50 million until it is accepted. Now, when you get advert of that auction, even when you get to the auction, all these ones that you are lifting up, when that man calls that, oh, this is a car, this car is beautiful, this is a BMW, I want to sell it for 10 naira. That is not, even when it says 10 naira, it is not an offer. It is still an invitation to treat. It is when those people are then lifting up that board and saying, no, I'll pay 10 naira, I'll pay 50 naira, I'll pay 100 naira. It is on the, when the last person says, I'll pay 50,000 naira, that is when the offer is made. That is when the offer is made. The offer is not made when the auctioneer comes up with the first initial price. Okay? So, that is it being differentiated from auction sale. Also, to differentiate an offer from a tender sale, from tenders, what tender means is, oh, when people are called upon to say, oh, we want to build, or I want you to service my company by giving us some toiletries. So you would then say, oh, we would give out a lot of, a tender will say, oh, it's not even, that's even an advert, that we want people to come up with tenders. The fact that you tender that thing you tender, the list that you tender is not an offer. Okay? The offer happens when they take one person and say, oh, Mr. Emmanuel, we are taking your own tender and we are going to go with this. Then you would then, you know, then go ahead and accept it and say, oh, it is okay. Then they make payments. All right. So tenders are not, because the fact that you are tender those lists doesn't mean they will accept it. And so it's not really you can really not say it can offer. It's just a tender. Comes an offer when they pick one and call upon the person. Okay, so someone said I should be explained tender. So I said it is a common, okay, let me just try to say it this way. It is a common commercial practice to ask for, you know, people ask for tender, where they request that this person brings this, I want my company to be getting, we want to get toiletries for so A and Z company, and we want people to come up with their list. How much do you want to sell it? We list out, oh, this tissue paper, this is some hand wash and all of that. This is how much we can sell it for you. Those are tenders. Those are the ways you ask. You try to give your prices to the company. So the offer comes up from the tradesman in the form of in the form of the tender. You know, if 10 people are giving a list to the owner of the business, it now behoves on the businessman to say, I am taking this. Immediately it takes one, that one it takes, he has given an offer to that person. So maybe you should try to understand what tender is so that you'll be able to differentiate it from it. Also from a timetable and from bosses thing, you should be able to, when you see a timetable of a vehicle, of like a railway, it is not yet an offer. When you buy the tickets, in the process of going to purchase the tickets, that is where the transaction takes place. Okay? Okay, so at this point, so that I can move very fast, but then before I move, I don't want to be too fast. Okay, so Glory said, in government bonds, when there's an auction, they usually say it is an offer. Okay, so for you, I would like in law and in contract, I'm saying categorically to you. And that is why we say you should read that textbook. When they give all those things, it is not it is just an offer by words, not in law. It is you when you say that, oh, I'll be paying this 10,000 naira for this. That is when you make an offer. Okay? So it is good that you go and read your textbook as well. Don't just do this so that you can be able to hear from jurists as well. You not only hear from your lecturers, you should be able to help yourself by reading wide. So go and read textbooks on contract. And we are giving you the textbook that you can read. If you don't have money to buy it, go to the library. The library has 1 or 2 or 3. You can sit down and read them, okay? So I hope that is explanatory to you, Glory, okay? So at this point, can I go ahead to the next elements? Or do you have any other question? I can answer 1 or 2 questions now. Okay. So let's go to acceptance. Anyways, so as not to waste time, let's not ask questions. Just as it is written here, acceptance is the final and the unqualified expression of assent to terms of an offer. So until acceptance, there is nothing but a revocable offer. There is nothing but a revocable offer. Until you accept an offer, nothing can be enforceable. Somebody who had given an offer cannot say, but I gave you an offer and you did not accept, so I'm going to sue you to court. No. A person is not binded by an offer. Okay? The person is not binded by an offer. But the offeree can revoke an offer. You can say, oh, I'm not making this offer again to the public and all of that. All right, so after the acceptance, there may exist a complete contract which binds the parties. So after the parties had entered into a contract, then at that point, after there is an acceptance, then you can say that there is a contract which has binded the parties. Although we are still going to be explaining some other elements. So what are the modes of acceptance? Number 1, acceptance must meet the offer. What I mean by acceptance must meet the offer is that one of the acceptance must agree with all the terms of the offer. If the offerer is the offeror, okay, I think at this point, I need to also tell you the terms that we use when we are mentioning offer and all of that. We have somebody called the offeror. The offeror is the person who made the offer. We also have the offeree. The offeree is the person who accepted the offer or whom the offer is made to. If you understand what I say, try to type it out. Okay? So, going ahead with on what I have said, I said the acceptance must agree with all the terms of the offer. If it seeks to qualify or to vary the offer, it is ineffective. So if an acceptance now tries to vary the offer, it becomes ineffective. That becomes a counter offer. If a person had made an offer that I want to sell this shoe for 50 naira, you went into a shop, he said the shoe is 20 naira. He made an offer. Instead of you saying, oh, okay, take the money, you said, no, I'm not paying 20,000 naira. I'm going to be paying 10,000 naira. that 10,000 naira becomes a counter offer. It is not an acceptance. Okay? Okay. Good job. I've seen all you had written. Okay. Okay, let's go back to what we are here for, what we are doing again, so that you are not distracted. So I said one of the mode of acceptance is that acceptance must be the offer. So it must meet all the conditions that the offeror had stated down as in the contract. Okay. So I also said that an acceptance must not amount to a fresh offer. And that's when I was talking about a counter offer. You must not give a counter offer saying it is an acceptance. No. If you are saying, oh, I can't pay for 20,000, I'm paying 10,000 naira, that is a counter offer. Okay? So another mode of acceptance is conditional acceptance. There are times that some acceptance may be based on some condition. You could say, oh, before I accept this offer, you must do this thing for me. Okay? Okay. I can just give you an example. So, maybe you and your friend. So I said counter offer means that when a person makes an offer, I want to buy a shoe I got into the shop and the shoe is 20,000 naira. The owner of the shop says it's 20,000 naira. But I said, oh, I can't buy 20,000, I'll pay 10,000 naira. Immediately I say I'll pay 10,000 naira. That word offer has shifted. I am now the offeror. I am now making a fresh offer. So that is it. So someone said, is there a difference between counter offer and a cross offer? Please, in law, I would prefer that you say counter offer. Okay? Please, in law, say counter offer. If there's a need for that, we'll keep talking about. Somebody says, is it the same as bargaining? It's not bargaining, please. Let us not go too far. It is not bargaining. I'm just saying if that be the case. Okay? It's not the same. We don't have anything called fresh offer. We have counter offer. Titi, please. We have counter offer. Okay? It's a legal term that you cannot say something else. You can just explain it. Okay? All right. All right. I said another mode is that, okay, I'll be going ahead because another mode is that conditional acceptance. There are times that some acceptance are based on some condition that it is until you do this that I will go ahead with this contract. So you wanted to buy a phone from your friend and you notice that the screen has cracked. I mean the protector. And you told him that until you get a new protector, I will not buy this phone. Although I want to buy it. You both negotiated for 20,000 naira and you both agreed for 20,000 naira. The next day, he then came to meet you that, but you say you are going to make payment, you didn't make it. And he started making noise. He said he's going to report to the management and all of that. You can then come up with your own that say, oh, but this screen hasn't been. So remember, when we were talking, we had said that we have accepted. So we have agreed that, remember we have agreed that immediately you have accepted, the offeror cannot go back again. And the contract is intact. So if at some point before accepting, you said, this is what I want you to do. If the person didn't do it, it will be deemed as if you have not entered into a contract. It will be deemed as if you have not accepted the contract, okay? So let's keep going. I hope we can do a lot. We are on slide 15. And also, how can an offer be communicated? An acceptance be communicated. Communication of acceptance. I try my best not to give you summaries. I try to explain it so that it will be clear and simple to you, okay? So communication of acceptance. Acceptance has no effect unless and until it is communicated. You cannot say, but in my mind, but she knows, she's my friend now. She knows I liked it, and she went to sell it to another person. But in my mind, you cannot in your mind accept an offer until you have brought it to the notice of the offeree, or the offeror rather. Acceptance can be oral or written, or even implied. Implied is by conduct, mostly by conduct, okay? Mostly by conduct. Like I said, so that, because what I noticed is that you guys are going too far. You are going outside of my scope, all right? So you don't think that if I mean implied, does it mean that it can be, you can just have it in mind? Implied means there is a conduct. Remember I said you want to enter a vehicle. The fact that you have entered that vehicle, the fact that you have made payments, all of that has shown you offered, you entered the vehicle by making the offer. The vehicle started moving by accepting. And maybe it started moving, the movement you make your payments. All of that, it must be communicated. And the communication can be oral, by words, it can be written, and it can be by conduct, which is by implied means. So, the next point I have here says, where the offeree merely decides in his mind to accept, but did not communicate his intention to offer, there is no contract. And that is what I tried to say earlier. This is me reiterating what I had said earlier. So what then are the exceptions to acceptance? So the rule that acceptance is only effective when it is communicated is subject to the following. 1, waiver. Okay? When you have waived your rights, even if you had stated it as a fact, okay, so the term of an offer may be such that the requirement of communication of acceptance is either expressly or impliedly waived. So this is commonly the case in the unilateral contracts, okay? So where the offeree is required to simply carry out his own side of the bargain without bothering to inform the offerer. Okay? So when I mean by waiver, you know, in a unilateral contract, if you did not bring, you saw the poster or you saw the advert and you did not try to do anything, that means you did not accept. Although that may actually be by, it's not by conduct, by in your mind, you decide not to do it. Okay, you have waived it. You waived it aside, you did not even do anything about it. That is an exception. Unilateral, it's happened mostly in unilateral contract. If you have a question, just drop it. When I'm done, I will answer them. Don't worry, I will answer all the questions when I'm done. Although that will be for those that can wait to listen to me. The next one is acceptance by post. Another exception is acceptance by post under the law. The general rule is that postal acceptance takes effect when the letter of acceptance is posted. Okay? Immediately you post something, you went to the postal office. Although nowadays, all these postal things doesn't really work, except for DHL. If both have agreed that this thing, we are going to be doing it by DHL, but in those days, you know, most of the things that they do is by letters. If you see an advert online in a newspaper, you can take a letter, you can write a letter to the company accepting it. But in the process where you are, in the day that you write that letter, even if the company hadn't seen it, it will be seen as if it is an a waiver to, it is an exception to that place where, you know, we said it has to be by oral, written. So immediately they did, even if they had not seen it and you have posted it, it will be seen as an acceptance. Immediately it is posted. So most of the times in those days, you may have 10 people that are posted. So they will look at the one that comes first and see that as the person who had accepted the offer. I hope you understand me by this at this point. Am I understood? Okay, so I'm saying no, ma. Okay, so I hope at this point you know what communication of acceptance is. Okay, the exception again. Remember we said acceptance must be communicated. And under it, I was able to read all of these things out and I explained them. That when you want to accept an offer, you have to communicate it, either expressly or by written agreement or by conduct. And I've said, but there are exceptions to this thing. Remember in unilateral contracts, when we're doing classification, we said it happens when one person make an offer to the world at large. Now, if 100 of us sees that advert, and out of 100 of us, 99 of us didn't do anything, that is a waiver. Okay? But one person came up and did something. You cannot come up later and say, you know, that waiver is an exception to it. Okay? Exception to it means in this way. When you are making an advert to the world, none of them will come and tell you that I accept this offer. I accept. The only acceptance you want to see is when they bring the dog. Let's assume that you say, oh, I am making this offer to the world that anybody that sees my dog, I'm going to give them 1 million naira. You don't need anybody to come and tell you that, oh, I'll be looking for the dog. Oh, I am looking for the dog. You don't need to hear that. There's a waiver. The waiver, the law has waived that communication. The law had waived that anybody should communicate to the offeror. You don't need to communicate your acceptance. The only acceptance there is that you bring the dog. It is when you bring the dog that you can say that you have accepted. Did you understand me? Or you want me to explain again? Is that understood now so that I can go to the next exception? If you don't, I would explain again. All right. The next one, it says acceptance by post. But somebody says my voice is breaking. It's not too. I'm with Unilateral and Wi-Fi and it's 100%. So for the others, is it breaking? Let me know, please, so that, because that means I'm not communicating. Is my voice breaking? Okay, so let me just explain this last one before we go. Let me explain this before we go. So next time we are going to continue from here. I said the last one is acceptance by post. Is an exception to the rule where we say that every acceptance must be communicated. And we said the communication should be by writing, by implied, or by conduct. By written, by oral. Now, in those days, when an advert is placed, an offer is placed like that, when that advert is placed, they don't have other means of communication in those days where you can say, oh, you can send a Google form. Oh, you can sign this form. Oh, you can contact us on this with this phone. Even if they have phone, The phone is not that circulated where all household has phones. So what is by post. So the law is then saying that if anybody had posted their acceptance, the moment that person has posted that acceptance, it will be seen as acceptance. And so the rule which says that you have to tell us explicitly will not come in. Because in those days, you may post today and you won't get to the destination in 10 days. And somebody may come up with the acceptance, even by oral means to the company, 5 days after that post. So what the law is saying in essence is that even if somebody had come to say, oh, we would go, I'm accepting this post 5 days after that post, the law will take that post and not the person that had come after 5 days. Did you understand me? I know some people are tired, but did you understand me? By post, exception by post. You said there's a slight noise. There's no noise here. Maybe some of your colleagues. Okay, so if you have a question, with this, we have come to the end of the class. We'll start from slide 15 on our next. And I know we have like 10 more slides that I wish that we had. Yes, someone said that their materials, they are textbooks, and we have given it to you. Oliver, we have textbook, and you have it in your course outline. Go to the library or go and buy it. If you can't buy, go to the library to get it. Okay? We have materials that you can read. Go to the library to read them or buy them. My material. Why? If you have a textbook, what do you need my materials for? Go and get the textbook and read. Okay? I hope today has been fruitful, because by the time we start our classes next week, we would have to review what we have done today. I want to be sure that you understood all I've explained and that you can go back and read and get everything. I will advise that you start reading now so that you can understand all that you have been taught. So do have a blessed day. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bye.